All right, guys. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Looks like we've got about 30 folks on here, which is really cool. This is the first time we've done this, so thank you for any for your patience as we have maybe hit a couple technical hurdles. Good to see some familiar faces up on the screen there. I want to go through two different kind of sets of things to get you all ready and hopefully active and engaged as much as we can. The first thing I want to do is there have been a lot of questions I've gotten about, okay, so the second Tuesday in November was a big election day. Now what, right? There are a lot of good redistricting reform supporters who are elected, including the person who will be in the governor's mansion, which is huge. But what does that mean for us? And I want to give you guys a grasp of that because I know that's top of mind. But the other thing, and the real reason for doing these, and we've got, I think, 2 more that we're doing. The other reason to do these is because I want to tell you guys the success we've had organizing in local areas. I want to tell you how that's come about because we need to replicate that more. And excuse me, we're learning how to replicate it, but one of the key parts is going to be sharing with you guys enough of the how this happens so that you guys can get active, because what I found is that we've got an amazing group of volunteers all over the state, and where we've kind of done just the little bit of organizing, we've kind of stepped back and get out of their way, and they start, just producing such good stuff for this movement with very little direction from us or any if they need it, but just kind of on their own. And I'd like to empower more people to be able to do that. So, okay, so let's see. Let me pull up the chat feature on the side so I can message everyone. And I believe you all will have the ability to message if you would like. And if you're on the phone, please chime in if you have questions. Since we're about 34 people on the phone or on this conference right now, I think we've got enough that anybody can interrupt, kind of raise their hand in the digital way and have a conversation. Hey, Janice. So let's talk about this. Let me, if we can do a screen share here, I'm going to show you the process for amending. Ooh, I don't know if it's going to let me do that. Show you the process for amending Virginia's Constitution. Hey, let's see. Aaron, if you're on here and know how to let me do a screen share, can you chime in on that? Because I'm, oh, there it is. There's the share screen button on the bottom.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, we're gonna share my my desktop here, and I'll share with you, for those of you who can see it, this is the constitutional, the timeline to pass a constitutional amendment in Virginia. I would love to think there's a way to fix this statutorily, that we could just put something in the code of Virginia and have it be the right answer. There are things we can do that kind of on the edges that would make a difference. We could talk about split precincts. We could talk about an advisory commission. We could do a non-binding referendum. We could even do a study bill for the General Assembly to require somebody to study this and engage it. But what we really need to really fix this is a constitutional amendment. And unfortunately, it's a really burdensome process. So on your screen, if you can see it, there are 4 boxes there. There's a January, March 2019. There's a November 2019. There's a January, March 2020, and then a November 2020. And these are all important steps. The Constitution of Virginia says to amend it, you have to pass the General Assembly twice with an election that intervenes those 2 passages of it. You just need a simple majority in each chamber. But the two times it passes, it has to be the exact same. No changing a comma, no cleaning it up the second time around. It has to be the exact same. And then the last step is it has to go to a referendum for the people in November. And again, only needs a simple majority to pass. And I'm not worried about that part. Actually, Virginians, 70-some% of Virginians are in favor of redistricting reform. We will pass if we get it to the ballot. I'm not worried about that. But what this means is the way the General Assembly operates, they hear that first step, it's called a first read constitutional amendment. They hear that in odd years. and we are coming into an even year General Assembly where they only hear the second reads. Now, this isn't in the Constitution that they have to do it this way, but it's really strong precedent. And so what that means is there will be constitutional amendments introduced this session, but they're all going to be tabled for next year. And even our supporters in the General Assembly are gonna table them. It's a process thing. I can kind of see from a logical standpoint, this coming year is the budget year. So maybe they don't want to deal with a whole funnel of first read constitutional amendments. Maybe they would just rather do it in the back.
I'm on a conference call.
The way I look at it is our legislative package as it exists right now, and we're going to roll this out soon. We're finalizing parts of it. Our legislative package is a 2-year deal, right? It's about a 14-month deal. So we've got things we want to do in this coming General Assembly session, but really I've got 14 months to gear up so that by this time next year, we have the constitutional amendment that we think is the best that can get through the General Assembly, and we have the votes to pass it, right? And that might involve some compromise, that might involve some adjustments. Hopefully it'll involve some more good ideas from people, from either legislators or supporters of ours or academics out there anyway to do it better. But we've got 14 months to get it right, because when we walk in to the General Assembly session in January of 2019, that's our shot. So it would pass then the November 2019 elections, the entire General Assembly is up for re-election. So that would check that required box, that intervening election box. And then, and this is the other part, is the General Assembly is going to change. I assume somebody will lose their seat or something like that. I assume it's going to happen. And then the new General Assembly in January of 2020 has to be willing to pass the same thing we passed in 2019. So there's a little bit of strategy. It's not just like you could get one General Assembly, oh, we know what these people would want. You can imagine a scenario where the House majority flips one way or another. And the world changes in terms of those dynamics. So we've got to come up with a consensus plan. I tell my Democratic friends that even if the Democrats run the table on this for 2019, they can't just shove down the Republicans' throat a plan that looks like it's going to benefit Democrats in a process. It's got to be something that has broad consensus. Now, the good news is most Virginians have a broad consensus about what we want, and we can get this through. The question is, can the General Assembly do it? So then there would be the January through March session of the second read constitutional amendment, and then it would go to the ballot that November. So that's the process for a constitutional amendment that we need to do. See if I can get out of this for a second. Oops. And go back to, of course, I've managed to ruin my screen share here, guys. Can anybody tell me what you see on your screen? Because mine is blank right now.
Nothing.
Blank.
I knew there would be a glitch. Here we go, guys. Is anybody on? Am I still on?
Yep, we still see you.
You would have to talk, so you might have to unmute yourself. Aaron, if you can
Maybe
unmute everybody.
Brian, you're here. People are
I somehow
here.
managed to get rid of everything on my screen.
I'm doing something quick.
All right, guys. If you can bear with me for just 2 seconds, I'm gonna try to log back on from.
Hey, Brian, try going into the screen share again now that you've gone back to camera. Also, you're muted, Brian. We can't see you.
All right. Sorry, guys. Thank you so much. Kathleen, good to see you. All right. Sorry for that bit of a thing there. So that's the process by which the constitutional amendments get through. We are excited about the prospects of it. We think there's some real momentum for this reform. I mean, I just was in Waynesboro last night and rewatched the jerry-rigged video, the documentary WCVE produced. And towards the end of that video, there's a segment where George Allen, nonetheless, says, you know, it's just one of those darn right issues. Somebody should run for governor, lieutenant governor, state office, state house, state senate. You know, they should run on this issue. And turns out a lot of people this time did. You know, it was something certainly they talked about in, oh yes, we will send, Brittany, that's a great question. We can send that graphic out to everyone. A lot of folks did. I mean, the next governor of Virginia made a very strong pledge to veto any gerrymandered map, and he's really out in front on that and said everything we could. A lot of folks in the newly elected folks we got, and anybody in a close election I saw that won almost to a person was a big supporter of redistricting reform. So that's exciting. So that's where we are on that. Now I wanted to talk about organizing locally. Before I get to that, does anybody have any legislative questions? We can either do the chat, or if you think you can unmute yourself, we can hear that there.
Can you just outline briefly what you expect will be in the constitutional amendment?
Sure. I think you need three things. The first thing you want is you want a process that's transparent. Right now we're in a smoky back room with, you know, where legislative privilege covers what they do. So by giving it to a commission, you automatically
testing the microphone.
Privilege.
It is working. Testing the microphone.
I can hear you. Whoever's testing the microphone. So there's that. You want transparency. Then the other thing is you want good, clear rules that prohibit political gerrymandering and keep communities together. So if you can, you know, and there's a couple of ways to do that. We've got a couple of different options, and we're looking at ways to refine that even further. Then the last part would be, you want to get it out of the hands of the most self-interested people in the universe, right? The legislators shouldn't be doing this process. So a 7-member commission, oh yeah, good call, Linda. There's a league pre-session roundtable on December 5th if anybody wants to go. The commission we've proposed, and we're not dogmatic about it, there could be other ways or other tweaks to it. We have a 7-member commission with no member of that commission being a lobbyist, a legislator, or a spouse of those two kind of people. There might be some other kind of caveats you would want, but there would be 4 people appointed by the General Assembly and 3 people who are what I would call the state's leading technocrats. So the 4 people appointed by the General Assembly would be 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, likely, because they would be appointed by the majority and by the minority party of each chamber. So you're likely going to get a balance of that. And what that does is it takes out, if they're even, it takes out, it doesn't matter if the Democrats control the Senate, or Republicans control the House. It's not a to the victor go the spoils kind of thing. Elizabeth, that's a good question. Are we using any other state's template? No, we are learning from where other states have messed up. We do have, Janice, that's a good question on do we have a whip count? Sort of. There's a lot of new folks. So a lot of new folks don't know all the details of this, but we've got a fairly solid margin of support in the Senate, and we believe we have about 55 to 60 votes in the House. But it also depends on what kind of plan. Sometimes the devil's in the details. Those are the 4 partisan people that would be on the commission. I don't think you can keep them out. I just think you got to keep it in balance. It would be a mistake, however, if on a 7-member commission, if you just let the majority win, right? Just 4 votes and you pass an amendment, because then we could have Democrats and Republicans collude together and pass a gerrymandered map, a bipartisan gerrymander like they did last time. We don't want that either. So we would require 5 votes to pass a map, 5 out of 7. That means no one is a swing vote, which is a mistake I think other commissions have made around the country. They get 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats and a 5th person to be chair, and it only takes 3 votes to pass a map. So really whatever that chair says goes, which is a lot of power to give one person and not a good system. So the question then becomes, who are the other 3 people? The other 3 people are the Auditor of Public Accounts, the State's Inspector General, and the Executive Director of the State Bar. Those 3 people, if they were all appointed by the governor, that would be a mistake too, right? Because then you're giving whoever owns the governor's mansion a lot of power in this. One of them is appointed by the governor, another is appointed by the General Assembly, and the Executive Director of the State Bar is actually they do a national search. The Board of Governors for the state bar selects somebody, but it's ultimately approved by the state Supreme Court of Virginia. So you kind of have a nice balance of executive, legislative, and judicial there, even though these people are really technical. You don't get the job to be the auditor of public accounts if you're a party hack. You get it because you're a really good CPA. So those are the balance. You need 5 votes to get it, but there's one last check on this. I call it the emergency break. So you need 5 votes to pass. So what if somehow or another those 3 technocrats all turn out to be partisan one way or another, let's say partisan Democrats, and the 3 independent technocrats are Democrats, and they team up with the 2 Democrats, that's 5 votes to pass. There's one last emergency break on that, which is the 2 Republicans vote no, or the 2 Democrats vote no in the inverse scenario. The 2 partisans vote no together, then it stops the map. It's a good check. I've never seen it anywhere else. It would really slow down the process, but hopefully knowing that in advance would encourage collaboration and people to not play politics with it. And then the same thing would happen if they only pull the emergency brake and can't come to a conclusion. The same problem would happen if the governor and the General Assembly don't agree, which is it would likely end up in the courts, which isn't preferable, but it's preferable to letting the General Assembly draw it, because I think the courts have historically done a decent job of drawing fairly neutral lines. Yeah, so no other state has done it like that, but we've kind of borrowed from other things that we've seen are really good. California has a prohibition on state employees or the spouses of state employees serving on their commission. That's something maybe we should look into. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd hate to exclude a professor, a really smart professor from, Virginia Tech or somebody serving on it, but at some point, if your funding is tied to the General Assembly, that's an incumbent protection incentive that we might want to avoid. But we're thinking through those things. And for the constitutional amendment, we've got a year and a few months to do it. So now is the time for good ideas, and for us as an organization to do a lot of listening, not just our supporters, but to the legislators who genuinely want to help, but might have some objections or might have some things we haven't thought of. Cool. That's a long answer to the constitutional amendment question, but I think it's important you guys know that. All right, Nicholas.
Thanks for the info.
Yeah, of course. Nicholas says, I wonder if House Republicans may now be scared they might get gerrymandered by Democrats the way the Senate Republicans were, especially with the Democratic governor and 2 tight chambers. I think that's a great question, Nicholas. It's a question of, do the 51 or maybe 49, but I think it's going to be 51, at least for a short term, Republicans left in the General Assembly, House of Delegates, do they dig their heels in and say, no way are we going to give up this power because it's the only thing maybe keeping us in power? Or do they say, this looks a lot like the late 90s did for the Democratic Party in Virginia, and it's time to create a fair system while we've got the ability to do so? I hope it's the latter. I know there certainly are plenty of Republicans who think that now is the time to pass the kind of good government, clean government stuff, because the days of a 66-seat majority are gone. But I don't know, and we're doing a lot of listening right now to figure that out. I've got a list of about 15 House Republicans who are either already out in support of redistricting reform or who I think will be a part of helping us get to a solution. And like I said, I'd really like a solution that has as broad as possible bipartisan support. I don't ever think I'm going to get Mark Cole, but broad bipartisan support would be great. Helen asked who actually drafts the legislation. So we've had the legislation drafted for a while. Our C4 board president is Greg Lusick. Greg is a longtime veteran of the Virginia Attorney General's office and was finished his career the last 10 years as the chief staff attorney to the U.S. Supreme Court. Greg knows this law. He argues cases. He's very smart. He and a bunch of other folks before I got on board drafted legislation that we've been using as a template and kind of going, modifying as we go. Officially, what we do is a legislator will submit one of our drafts to the Department of Legislative Services. They'll make it look like a bill and maybe clean up some other language or anything we need, but we've been through that process a couple of times. Good, Linda. Yeah, the pre-session for the League of Women Voters Legislative Roundtable is Wednesday the 6th. And I hope if anybody's in Richmond, you can go. I'll be there as well. I think I get like 5 minutes to talk about gerrymandering and what we're doing this session. But yeah, any other questions on legislation or how we do this before we talk about how we win this by organizing? Thank you guys. This is cool. It's cool to see so many faces on the screen here. I'm really glad you guys are all tuned in here. We're up to 44 people, which is just great. All right, so now let's talk about the other thing that we need to do is local action group. Oh, thanks, Kathleen. Is that Delegate Murray? No, that's Kathleen Murray, not Kathleen Murphy. Keep communities together, very positive. Yeah, that's a good call. We can definitely keep the communities together. The whole premise of keeping a community together is so we can elect our own representatives. Now, that might be a racial, ethnic, or language minority community protected by the Voting Rights Act, or it could just be, Richmond as a community in some way or another. Elizabeth writing, there's a lot of suspicion from GOP voters when I was at the polls. I would say that my interaction with conservative, and I mean this small c, they could be libertarian or they could be Republican, people is they don't like the status quo, but they are suspicious of a government solution to the status quo, which I think is kind of inherent in their own political philosophy. And I think a really healthy thing to have, because I wouldn't want us to recreate the mistakes of an Arizona commission or a Colorado commission. We should be skeptical of a fix, and we should really put it through those ringers. So I think when you have conversations with people, say like, the current way we do this isn't sustainable. We have to fix it. Help us come up with that solution, help us engage. I think our commission is pretty darn good, but it certainly wouldn't say it's perfect. And then the other side of that is, let's not let perfect be the enemy of good, right? We might have a better idea. It might not be perfect, but gosh darn it, it's certainly better than where we are today. If you are not speaking, I hear somebody breathing kind of heavily. So if you're not speaking, you might want to mute your phone there, because it is coming through. Apparently your cell phone is really, really good. All right, now let me see if I can do the screen share again. I'm a little leery of it, but this will be the last thing, so you actually don't need to see me anymore. This is a slide deck of how we organize. When I first took over as executive director almost 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years this January, we had these regional boards, and the idea for a regional board was we're going to get a somewhat prominent community Republican and similarly a Democrat, and they're going to be the two chairs of this local regional board. And what we found is that didn't really work everywhere. Sometimes I had trouble getting a Republican, sometimes I had trouble getting a Democrat. It was really frustrating. And then we stepped back and said, look, we don't actually need another board. I have a foundation board, I've got a 501c4 advocacy board, and we have an advisory board. Like, honestly, there's a degree to which a board isn't what's going to propel this thing, because we need action and we need to empower people. We've got over 1,500 people who have volunteered or said they're willing to volunteer, whether it's data entry or going out and collecting signatures at a farmer's market, or being willing to pinch hit if one of us can't go and speak on a topic to cover a community group and talk about this issue. We've got so many people that want to help. And we're like, let's boil this down into what we're going to do. So what we've come up with a plan is to create local action groups. We've done this decently in a number of places. It's really taken off in Fairfax and Alexandria. We've got the buddings of this in Richmond and in Virginia Beach. We've got a regional board that's really active in the Charlottesville region, and maybe we need to think about splitting that up a little bit, or having conversations about how do we get them geared towards these action steps. So it's these local action groups, and then statewide we would have working groups, because they're all built around 6 different actions here. So here was the question we asked: what actions do we know we need everywhere, in every part of the community, and likely that we can't do from headquarters here in Richmond? And the 6 things we came up with were fundraising, recruitment and training, the presence at the polls, which is still the most successful thing we do. Thank you for anybody on this call who has done that with us. There are events that go on, either that we create ourselves or that are already in the community that we should be a part of. There's social and local media, and then there's local politics. There's just no substitute for having people on the ground in different communities focusing on these 6 things. So let me go through this and say, for fundraising, I don't expect anybody to go out there and get us a $10,000 grant or a $5,000 check from an individual. Though if you can, please don't stop yourself. We're in a big end of year fundraising campaign and we'd love the help. But what I do know is some of our best fundraising has come from local volunteers saying, hey, you know what? I could host a little party at my house and we could encourage low dollar monthly giving. We could also, oh, so-and-so is a prominent person in our community. They usually give to good causes. I can let them know about this or make an introduction for me or Liz to make the ask. That's the kind of thing we need help on. I would say when I took this job 3 years ago, I thought for sure we would just collect a bunch of big checks from business leaders that had always supported this. That's not how it's worked. It's really worked by normal people making normal donations, just like my wife and I do. Like when we support a cause, we'll write like $100 check, or maybe we'll do $10 a month or something like that. And that's how we support organizations. And it turns out that people in that capacity are doing the same for us. Our average donation, I believe right now, including the handful of very large donations we get, our average donation is $110. And that's really, really cool. And it's dropping because more people are giving $20.21 a month and kind of things like that. So that's the fundraising aspect of that. So just somebody to help us guide in a local community on that. Then there is recruitment and oh, go ahead. Is there a question? I'll explain how these all work together, but I wanted to talk about the individual things we need to give you kind of a perspective. A lot of times when we pull these groups together, it ends up being people from similar circles, right? Either they're local Democratic activists or they're some business leaders in a community, and they don't necessarily represent all of that community incredibly well. But I don't want to wait till we get everybody on board to start doing actions. But what I do want to have is at least 1 or 2 people dedicated to helping us recruit and then train new recruits in. So what are we missing? Do we need libertarians in this committee because we don't have any, or do we need to get some Republicans or Democrats? Basically bringing in more supporters and more volunteers into the local action group. And then when they get in there, helping to train them, doesn't have to be elaborate, but helping to train them and get them brushed up on our talking points. Like, what does our commission structure look like? Are we really bipartisan, right? Really emphasizing that and training them that. And so that would be a crucial part of us growing. Then the next thing, and probably the biggest volunteer effort we do, is presence at the polls. We need local leadership and coordination to help this kind of huge logistical effort happen. There's distribution and collection of materials. There's local poll worker training. And by the way, these all say managed by Blake. We actually have, Blake left us about 6 weeks ago, and about, I don't know, probably 3 weeks, though I think Aaron might say it feels like a year. Aaron Ware joined us. So anything that says managed by Blake is going to be managed by Aaron now. So that's presence at the polls. And then events. And when I mean events that we create ourselves or that are already going. Like last night I was in Waynesboro. They have a historical speaker series where they show a documentary and then have a discussion afterwards. It was wonderful. The Wayne Theater down there is beautiful. That's renovated. But that's an ongoing thing they do. And one of our supporters and her husband helped sponsor that night for us to get in there and have a conversation. It's a great way to do it. So it would be, and also the other side is when we do have an event, either it's something we create or somebody else, we need folks on the ground to help invite local leaders and politicians and VIPs or just good folks in the community to be there. Because it's one thing for us to send out an email blast to people in the area. It's another, it's a whole other thing if you get asked by a friend, hey, I'm going to this thing about gerrymandering. Why don't you come join me? That'll make a big difference. And then also we need volunteers to help us staff these events. The bigger events we have, we want to collect as many petition signatures as possible, and that's an important part there, and we need a lot of bodies to help do that. Then the last two here are social and local media. I think we do as an organization a really good job of getting into the Post or the Richmond Times-Dispatch. One of our volunteers, Carol Rowan, wrote a great op-ed in the Roanoke Times today that was in. There was one earlier this week as well, or last week. It was excellent. We do a decent job of getting into kind of the big papers. But that being said, a lot of people consume hyper-local media. In other words, in Richmond, there's RVA News that Ross Catro runs. If you're not in Richmond, you have no clue any words I just said. But if you are in Richmond, you probably read that every day. And that's really important. So yeah, oh, by the way, if anybody is typing on the chat board, I don't have that on my screen. So if there's something, maybe Aaron, if you read something, a question on the chat board, if you want to chime in and read it aloud, we can answer, but I'm sorry I don't have it on my screen, and honestly, I'm a little afraid to adjust my screen for you guys. Anyway, so we need some folks there in each region to kind of keep an eye on the social and local media channels that we wouldn't necessarily be a part of. And that would be a really, it would help us echo our message out, but also get into new niches that otherwise we won't be in. And some people just have expertise in that. And then the last of the 6 actions is local politics. The politics here in every locality are different. My God, I've learned that in this job for sure. Virginia Beach Republicans are different than Fairfax Republicans, and Democrats out in Danville, Martinsville are way different than Democrats in Arlington. And the local stuff matters, and we want to be sensitive to that. And building supporters, helping people understand what we're really trying to do, but also get local town halls that politicians have and being a presence at those and asking questions and engaging. I mean, that stuff makes a ton of difference. It's not, you know, basically to a lot of these people, I'm just some lobbyist in Richmond. And I hate that, but I have the lobbyist card, so it's a real thing. But, you know, it's much better to hear from a local community person. And you guys just have a voice that we want to amplify as much as possible. And that's the way to look. So I don't expect us in these groups to have someone who's an expert in all of these 6 topics. Sometimes we just need somebody that has an eye on it, and they can help think us through or at least point us in the right direction. So those are the 6 things. I can tell you how it all would work together, but if there's any questions, maybe now would be a good time to talk. Okay. All right. So maybe there is 1 or 2, but I'm not hearing you if you're on mute. Here's how we kind of organize this in what we call a matrix. If you'll look here on the left column over here, it's Charlottesville, Fairfax, RVA, Southampton roads. These are just all placeholders. Don't worry about who the names are. They're just examples. What I would like to have is in every local action group, just collection of people in Richmond, collection of people in Lynchburg or wherever it is, have folks who can help fill in and be a point person on fundraising, recruitment, polls, events, social, local, and politics. I would love to have more than 1 person in each of those, because it's not meant to be a formal thing where you're signing up for a year-long commitment. If you're a CPA and you really just can't help us out from January until until May, I get it. But you could probably help us on the polls in November, right? So maybe there's that kind of trade-off. And what I want to make it is fluid, but just enough structure that you guys can get what we're doing here. And we can have a point person, because the other side of it is we had a really successful poll working program despite the horrible weather on election day. But we would love to hear feedback from everybody. But at some point that we've got 70-some thousand supporters, that's hard to get. So what if the point person in each of the local action groups who was helping with work the polls, we could go and have a conversation with those, let's say 12 people. And then we could get really good, they could be responsible for getting feedback from their group and then kind of distilling that into a conversation that Liz and I could really dig into with a dozen or so people. That kind of conversation, that dig in, would be what I would call a statewide working group. And that way we're connecting all the people all around the state who work the polls or who were the coordinator in their local area for that. And we're all getting together and saying, what worked, what didn't, what do we need to change about the literature we hang out or the training or whatever. Those are really important questions for us to get better at. But we need some sort of loosely organized working group to have that conversation. And the same would be true for all the other kind of events. So if you can kind of think of this as a horizontal and a vertical kind of matrix here, the horizontal would be all of the people in the area helping out. And the vertical would be the statewide working group that we can turn to from headquarters to help us grapple with how things are going and what are we doing that's good and what are we doing that we need to change. So let me skip over here. All right, frequent questions I've gotten from this kind of conversation so far. Can I serve in more than one blog? Could I be the point person on presence at the polls, but also I'm really good with social and local media? Yes, you totally can serve on both. I would suggest you also get people to help you, so have a couple of people there. Can multiple people serve in one block? Absolutely, if you wanna, but we probably need that. Can I be in a local action group and not be in a specific block, like not take a specific leadership or point person kind of role in any of this, absolutely. I do not want people to think that if you're not on this block, I don't care that you're willing to help. Sometimes we just need people that are like, hey, look, if I've got an hour or two, I'll donate it to the cause and I'll help do whatever, but I can't coordinate. I'm too busy or whatever. I've got other things to do, but we need those people too, right? Those people to help us, you know, show up at events and things like that and get things done. So you can totally be in a local action group and not be a point person. That's not meant to be an exclusory thing. When do the working groups meet is what I hear a lot. And the statewide working groups would meet kind of as needed based on what we need feedback and when we need ideas, and also the kind of timeline. You can imagine presence at the polls is really busy in September, October, and November, but not so busy in January, February, and March. If you were helping on fundraising now, like now's the time. And we have that. And so we kind of want to make it reasonable for the busy and slow seasons. I would love for the local action groups to meet some sort of regular iteration. So everybody kind of get together and have a conversation. Some folks do it twice a month. Some folks do it once a month. We're not trying to dictate that, just, you know, keep in touch and stay active. What kind of authority do the working groups or local action groups have? The goal for us is to foster input and collaboration. This doesn't change our board structure. It doesn't change the people I have to report to. They still have all the legal and financial and all this authority that we have otherwise. Oops, remind me later to that. Sorry, guys. But we really would hope that folks like this would take a leadership role, and we would love to hear from folks. How do we resolve disputes? We'll do our best to do it. I don't think we've had a lot, but there certainly are different views in how we should go about this. And I really like hearing that. As much as I wish everybody was always on the same page, that would be so much easier to run a nonprofit where everybody just agreed with me. It's not actually helpful, right? I do need to hear people who disagree with me and who disagree with each other. We need to think differently to get this done, because, you know, we don't have it done yet. So whatever we've been doing might be building, but it also might be building in the wrong direction. And we really need to hear those critiques. So we hope people would be encouraged to do that through these structures. And the last question I usually get is, how do volunteers get assigned to blocks? Like, it's a self-assignment. I would love for maybe the recruitment leader or somebody who takes on the task of coordinating the local action group to help us do that. But it's not something we want to do from on high. I would rather folks help us out and do that. So the other thing we get, and let's see if I can stop my screen share now, come back to you guys. The other thing I get is, so how do we get this going? Well, there's two ways that we view it from here. We have a list of supporters in every corner of Virginia. Some are bigger, longer lists than others. And then we also have a list of people who have said they were willing to volunteer. I really view that I'm willing to volunteer group as the kind of seed of a local action group in every part of so the first goal would be to take those 20 people, or maybe it's 5, or maybe it's 50 people who in that area have said, I'm willing to volunteer, and get them all together and like say, hey, just even on an email chain, hey, you guys are the people who are willing to step up in Lynchburg. The second step would be for folks to then get together in a meeting and go through kind of a deep dive training, a little bit about what we've covered today, but also like we'll show up there wherever it is and have a real conversation with you about what's going on, answer a lot of questions, probably give you more information than you need, but at least you will have been exposed to it so you feel empowered to lead this yourselves in what we need. Let me see if I've got some questions over here. Oh, Bill is on here. The Fairfax Local Action Group is meeting tomorrow night. You can email Bill there at Bill, you might have misspelled information. Information.bmilheiser2010@cox.net. Or maybe it is iFormation. There's a Peninsula Local Action Group meeting, kind of this kind of deep dive thing. The start of it is on December 7th. So these are starting to bubble up. Sometimes we've had them and we haven't done a great job from HQ of pushing and following up, but we're pushing this. Aaron said, how about the Charlottesville Local Action Group? When are they meeting? They're not meeting in December. They just met on Monday, but we can connect you with that, Aaron. If ERIN. Aaron, where can we make a note to connect Aaron Lake to that. They sent us a summary of the structure of the independent commission and rationale for that structure, please. We're actually working on that document right now, Henry. It's hard to explain because it's kind of a long one. So we want to make it in a good readable format. I'm not sure. I know we don't have that yet, but it is in a bill. I mean, you can, do the reading part for that. And would love to find out about the Charlottesville lag. I don't have much time. Sometimes, great. I would love for you to be informed, Ann. And yeah, just people being on the local action group email list is better than nothing because at least you can plug in when you can. I think somebody's needs to mute their phone. I hear some feedback. Maybe somebody's at a cool coffee shop. Can I tell you how many signatures we collected on election day? We are still getting a lot in. We probably got about 50% of our poll workers have returned their signatures, which is a low number to be this late. I know it's hard to return, folks. But we've got about 50% in, and based on projections, we're going to be somewhere around 11,000 signatures from election day, which would be good. Oh, there you go. Bill Millhauser, B. Millhauser, 2021 is correct. There's the deal. Lynn Schultz, Hampton Roads lag. Is there a scheduled meeting? So we've got a really great Southampton Roads regional board. Somebody's really loud, guys. Come on, people. So there's a really great Southampton Roads local action group. Statewide, local. Back up. There's a really great Southampton Roads regional board. They were actually one of the ones that we did get a prominent Republican, a prominent Democrat, and a bunch of other great people on board. And they meet usually twice a year. So they're not a lot of action, but they are there to help. And I've got a list of them to call when I need help, which is really good. What we're going to do in Southampton Roads is we're going to do a Virginia Beach local action group and then a Norfolk local action group that'll be part of the regional board, but those are getting formed. The Peninsula we're treating separately, and we need to figure out how are we going to tackle Suffolk and Chesapeake, which are places we need to be as well. Sometimes what happens is like the Fairfax local action group has really just done a lot of work in Prince William to help us out. We don't have a local action group in Prince William. We've got a couple of volunteers that kind of have folded themselves into the Fairfax group, even though they don't live in Fairfax. And so that's maybe a model we could replicate. I'd also say that Bill Millhauser and Andy Brevard and Andy Butler and a bunch of Marilyn Williams, a bunch of other folks in Fairfax who have done this they've taught me so much by how they've done this. It's amazing. They're willing to help and help us organize elsewhere. Lynn, that's a great point, Janice. Lynn, you could probably come to the Peninsula meeting on December 7th, Newport News, Hampton, and probably Williamsburg, but that's a good question. But we're going to try to kind of figure that out, and that would be a good conversation there. Who are the contact people for the Norfolk and Virginia Beach groups? Megan, if you send me an email, I'll just make an introduction for you. I don't have a go-to leader or so in Norfolk. I've got a number of good people, but we haven't said, hey, we got to form a lag yet. We're early in that. Virginia Beach is far away, Lynn, but we can connect you there. Good, Giselle. Alexandria lag is meeting on December 6th at 7 p.m. When you make noise in your call, screen goes to the center screen. Nicholas, you're funny. All right, what's going on with the Richmond lag? Brittany, this is a great example of something we kind of started to pull together, and then we as headquarters, we stopped pushing. And so we need to re-up that and get it going. I think we've got plenty of people who are super informed about this, like you, who are super active, Nicholas, super active, a bunch of other folks that are willing to help. We probably just need to get together and set some goals and get engaged right now. But probably just step one is everybody needs to come together and have a face-to-face meeting, if only for 30 minutes or an hour. So look, there's no magic way to do this, guys, but those are the 6 actions I know we need. And I hope this gives you all enough of an empowerment to say, all right, I get where they're headed. We can take that seedling of an idea and apply it to my community. And what we need to do from headquarters, and we need to do a much better job of this, is connect all we're doing 3 of these calls, connect all the people we can who have been willing to do this, get you guys all together. And it would be really helpful if you could email out the contact people for all the lags so that we can make contact with them and find out what's going on. I think that's a great idea. And want to make that list like on the website, we can certainly email it out to you guys, and that would be an excellent way to do this. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to like hoard all the contact information, but I also leery of sharing everybody's with everybody. But I think the folks who are on this call and who are really dedicated like this, that's an awesome idea, and that's great. So yeah, guys, that's the gist of what I have. Are there other questions or thoughts? I don't want to keep anybody longer than this. I'm really grateful for your patience, both with my technological issues and people not muting and all that stuff like that. That's just how it works. Yeah, Janice, thank you. You're awesome. We've got really good people in this organization who have stepped up from all corners of Virginia, from all sides of the political spectrum. It's really awesome to see. I know maybe in your section of the world, you don't get to see all of that, but I do. It's a real privilege of this job to see how passionate people are. Aaron, what kind of help is needed with drafting a preliminary amendment? We've got most of the drafts already done because of previous sessions. So I think we can look at those and see what needs to be changed. I'll stay on for a little bit longer, but that's the kind of end of my thing. I'll be happy to answer. Oh, thank you, Henry. That's kind. I'll be happy to answer questions in the chat. I'll stay on for a little bit longer, but that's the end of everything, and we'll start sending out information to you guys to get you connected and taking the next step. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, great. Helen or Helene, we would love the help. Aaron can contact you for data entry because we do have a lot of people who would do this. Anne, thank you so much. Lynn, wonderful. Helen, thank you guys. This is great. I'm excited for doing this next time because I think this is a cool conversation. Yay.
Thanks, Brian. Grogan out.
Hey, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, man.
Giselle, will there be regular calls to update you guys? Yeah, during the session, there definitely will be. We have usually every other Friday, I send out an email to a bunch of folks. Aaron, can we add Giselle to that list of 300? We probably need to add everybody who's on these webinars to that list of 300, which is probably going to be 350 by the time we do this. And include them. And what we do is we try to keep it to about 30 minutes. Sometimes it can be about 40 minutes, but it's an update call meant to be about every 2 weeks for people that are really nerdy. I think Amanda might be on it already, but yeah, maybe you are, Amanda. We haven't updated it in a long time. So Aaron will knock that out and keep our list, because keeping these lists accurate is more challenging than I thought. It's a full-time job, but once we get it right, it really sings, and everybody can just call into this call a couple times a month and get the latest updates and ask questions and things like that. Cool. Good stuff, folks. Yeah, who are the swing legislators, Nick? So we're working on that because so many of them got an early retirement. So some of the swing legislators, we're trying to figure out who exactly those people are, but they're also the people we're going to be targeting for the next 14 months. Thank you, Bill. I would say, generally speaking, if it's a suburban area, there's probably a swing legislator, right? And we probably, even if they're good on the issue today, we need to keep driving because we don't want to lose anybody, just because there's going to be a lot of party pressure as we get closer. We want to do this as effectively as possible. So we got to keep the pressure on. Even the folks that we know are good, there's certainly some folks that I know would do this even if they would lose their seat. But I think there's some legislators who look at this and say, yeah, it's the right thing to do, but I also want to make sure I get reelected. And that's more common than I'd like to think.
Hi, Brian, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Laura. I'm sorry to do this. I'm sorry to do this by voicemail. I can't seem to make the chat work at my end.
No way, that's fine. That's fine.
Two things. One is, if you have petitions in my area, Arlington or Alexandria, they're outstanding, email me and I can go pick them up. The second thing is, if we're working on particular aspects with a lag and we have questions, should we contact the people responsible directly? In other words, if Aaron's doing it, we contact Aaron directly.
Let me suggest that if you email director@onevirginia2021.org, just director it goes to all three of us. So we field questions that way, and then we kind of say, hey, I got this, and take care of it. So you don't have to worry about who's in charge of that. And Aaron's getting up to speed still, so he might not have all the answers yet. But if you, you're welcome to email any one of us. Giselle, it's a great question. What are the roles of people at headquarters? So I'm the executive director, so I get the catch-all. Liz White is in charge of fundraising, but also does a lot of events. We all kind of wear a bunch of hats. And Aaron has come on board in the last couple of weeks. And Aaron he's doing a ton of work right now with our database and cleaning that up and making it sing and faster than I could ever have imagined, because I don't have those skills. Hey, Brock, I think you've got us on, it's a little loud if you can mute. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Perfect. And then, but Aaron's doing a lot of database stuff, as well as a lot of kind of digital work for us on our website. We're kind of looking at not a redesign, but a revamp, if you will, on some things, as well as making sure that all of our different platforms sing together so that we can report out numbers very quickly. Because I would love to be able to give you all, hey, here's exactly how many signatures we have and supporters we have in District 85. We've got 575. We want to get to 1,000. Let's go. And then we can track our progress as we go. And that's one of the things that Alex is, not Alex, I'm looking at your thing here. That's one of the things that Aaron is helping us do. Let's see. Brittany, my new delegate has not come out on the side of the issue one way or another. What is the election come and gone? How do you recommend pursuing this as a constituent? Brittany, is your new delegate John McGuire? I actually think John's on my list. I think he's a really thoughtful person that doesn't like politics that much. And well, obviously he likes it enough to run for office, but enough that I had a conversation with him at a NARF meeting. I spoke at one where he spoke afterwards. Really liked him. He's a great story. And I think he's somebody we can work with. We need to have a conversation with him. And we need to get some people that will listen to him, he will listen best to. So Brittany, I know you're a Democrat. I know he's not. So we maybe need to find some of the right Republicans to come in there and have a conversation with him. What volunteer needs do you have beyond data entry? The real volunteer needs we need are all kind of outlined in that kind of 6-person thing, but the biggest thing we need to do is get more signatures and get more people to donate, right? Those are the 2 things that I'm working on. Oh, and we also need a local, what do you mean like a local? Oh, yeah. If you're local to Richmond, which Giselle, I know you're way up in the DC orbit. Liz we need admin help, and Liz and Aaron are both expecting their own little bundles of joy in mid and late January. So it might be a time where I'm flying solo with our lobbyists. So if there's ways for folks to help in Richmond, we might need that. I'm not sure exactly how to schedule that. It probably depends on who's willing to volunteer and how. But yeah, the other big volunteer needs we have is just going out there and getting petitions and letting us know when things are happening, or pushing things in the local media, like the hyper local media that we won't know about from our standpoint. I think if you kind of think of those 6 different things, those are the main actions we need. And there's kind of volunteer opportunities in that, even if it's not like spend an hour at the farmer's market, that's really helpful, but there might be a way just to do it, just to kind of make a list of all the local publications and their email addresses to talk to, and let's get in touch with those people as well. And that's kind of something, there's no set hours for that, just somebody's got to do it. We need to see Aaron and Liz on screen to say hi. So Liz is here and Aaron is homesick. So I'm sure he looks like hell. And I'm sure but yeah, no, Aaron is out for the day, but still logging on for this. He's a champ. You guys are awesome. All right, so we're down to about 18 folks now. Are there any other questions or thoughts we could have for this? All right, guys, this has been really cool. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, do everyone a favor and stay off camera. Yeah, we've got such good people that are a part of this organization. I'm glad you guys are all here. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna sign off and get to some work before I go to a luncheon on TV and millennials and reaching millennials via social media. different way, because that's something we have to work on a lot in this organization is reaching that. Cool, guys. I thank you all so much and look forward to talking with you all soon. We'll send out some follow-up. Bye, guys.